To others, it seems like you're doing a lot, but on the inside, this feels like your baseline. If you've had the experience of someone just wondering or asking you, how do you do it all? How do you manage it all? But to you, it all just feels like normal. It just feels like your baseline. But externally, it looks like you're juggling quite a bit of things. But now you've gotten to the point where it's all, or all of the doing too much that you're so accustomed to, now feels like actually too much. You've had to slow down a bit. You're unable to perform in the way that you used to. You might be a high achieving woman experiencing burnout. And burnout is very common because of the system that we live in and just because of how we engineer our lives. And it's not unique to high achieving women. But in this video, I want to highlight the nervous system pattern that is underlying the burnout that happens in high achieving women. As someone who identifies as a high achieving woman myself, who thinks she might be experiencing the beginnings of burnout. Hi, I'm Dana. I'm an integrative medicine physician and a somatic coach for the female nervous system. On this channel, I share my musings about my personal health as well as how I apply my favorite integrative health modalities to improve my own health, and I'd love to take you along on that journey with me. In the coming months, I'll be opening up spaces for one-on-one coaching containers for women who also identify as high achieving, who might be having symptoms of burnout, as well as cycle symptoms such as PMOS, PMS, PMDD, endometriosis, or just painful periods in general. I would love to support you using the modalities that I have an interest in. If you're interested in that, then there will be a link below in the description to join the waitlist so that you can be the first to hear when those offerings open up. So, burnout. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you're not burnt out because of your personality. You're burnt out because of a nervous system response that is inside you that leads you to constantly over effort, over exert, constantly be striving or achieving or reaching for the next thing. Not because you're just perfectionist, like it's not just your personality that leads you to do that, it's your nervous system, which therefore means that if it's a nervous system response, then it therefore follows that if we change the input to the nervous system and begin to rewire that nervous system response, then that can lead to less burnout or more resilience to prevent burnout. Now, burnout in a high achieving woman does not look like collapse. You won't all of a sudden collapse and be unable to do all the things that you've signed yourself up for. At least it doesn't start like that. It can get there if you really ignore the signs of burnout and you just keep on going without realizing that your body is saying something to you. But it doesn't start as collapse. It starts as your body whispering to you in symptoms. And eventually those symptoms can get louder and a whisper becomes a shout or a scream, and then collapse. It's windy. Quite windy, and then collapse comes after. So I'm not at the state of collapse, but I'm definitely at the state where I have decreased resilience and decreased capacity. So I'm now at the point where I realize that, oh, I might be doing too much. A year ago, I had a conversation with my therapist, and I told her all the things that I had going on in my life: a full-time job, a part-time business, part-time school, just a whole lot going on. Well, I didn't think it was I knew it was a lot, but it didn't feel like too much. She said to me, Dana, it seems like you've taken on too much. And honestly, I was slightly offended because I was like, what do you mean too much? It didn't feel like I was taking on too much. It felt like I was doing exactly what I normally do because I've had this pattern since high school. So the pattern of constantly overachieving, even perfectionism, constantly doing a lot, filling up my calendar and my schedule so much, just saying yes to lots of things, doing well at lots of things. That's just been how I operate since high school. The signs of burnout started last year as well as 2 years ago when I was doing my hospital rotations. Luckily, 2 years ago, I was able to take a break from working a full-time job. And so I was able to stave off and just hold off the burnout for a little while. But as soon as I started working a full-time job again, plus doing all the other things that I normally do, then the symptoms started to whisper and then shout. So for me, it has looked like a skin flare, an acne flare for an entire year. I didn't have acne as a teenager. I developed acne as an adult, and I've had flares of acne where it would get really bad and then heal. But this flare that I've had since starting my full-time job a year ago, it has not gone away. It's just been that way for the past year. So that's one way in which my body has been whispering to me, not yet shouting. It's a scream because it's been consistent for a whole year. I've also had like a decrease in my energy levels. I've been feeling much more tired. And it's also difficult to rest. I do try to rest, but it can be difficult to rest. But I've now gotten to the point where my therapist has said to me, "Oh, you're doing too much." I can now, from the perspective of Dana today, I can see where I'm doing too much. So that's an important clue. That's an important clue about burnout. If you start to realize, "Oh, this is too much. I can't handle this. This is too much," then that's a sign that you might be burnt out. Other things that can happen is cycle symptoms. So one of the big things that would happen to me when I get stressed or have a really stressful period of my life, I would miss my menstrual cycle. I would sometimes miss it for 2 or 3 months because I do struggle with PMOS. So a missed cycle is a very important indicator of increased stress in your life and decreased resilience, and it might be a signal, an indicator of burnout. You might also have more painful periods, heavier periods. Yes, your period responds to the state of your nervous system and it responds to the stress in your life. It's not just heavy because we don't know why. It can respond to stress. So you might notice more difficult menstrual periods around a time in your life when you're more stressed or probably burnt out. Some people can even lose their period due to burnout. Another thing that showed up for me is that I started getting sick more often. Just this year, in the past 2 to 3 months, I've gotten sick every month, right around the time of my late luteal phase. And I'm remembering it now because it was 2 months in a row. But since I've started my job a year ago, I've definitely had phases. I've had months where in the luteal phase, I could definitely feel myself about to get sick or almost getting sick, but I kind of like held it off with trying to prioritize rest and nourishment and nutrition. But it's interesting that it usually happens in the luteal phase. Not saying it will only happen in the luteal phase for you, but a thing to know about the female nervous system is that our heart rate variability, which is a measurement of our nervous system resilience, if you have higher heart rate variability, that means you have higher parasympathetic tone and therefore more nervous system resilience. We can get more into the details of that in another video. But what I'm saying about heart rate variability, or HRV, is that with the female nervous system, HRV naturally drops in the luteal and menstrual phases, especially the late luteal and menstrual, because that's when both of our sex hormones have dropped, which our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, they do give us energy. So in the late luteal, when progesterone is dropping off and we don't have any estrogen, we don't have much energy. And so our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, upregulates to give us more energy. So we have increased sympathetic tone and decreased parasympathetic tone, and therefore decreased nervous system resilience. So tying those two things together, I found it very interesting that it was around the time of my luteal phase that I was getting the flu, just like getting sick. And this is coming from someone who'd only get sick once or twice a year. So to go from that to getting sick twice in 2 months, 2 consecutive months in a year, that was a big sign to me that, yeah, something is going on. My body is saying something. So for you, the symptoms might not look the same. Only you can know what your symptoms of burnout are. It might also look like lack of motivation, lack of discipline, procrastination, knowing what you need to do but being unable to do it. Because at the end of the day, what's underlying burnout is or at least for me, is a nervous system pattern of functional freeze. It's a mixture of fight and flight with some freeze in there. So you feel the need to go, go, go and over effort, but your body also feels the need to freeze and collapse and not do anything. And so when you mix those two things together, it can feel like what the end product is, which is burnout. One of the important things that I recognized when I began to reframe this whole experience that I'm having is that I think I'm burning out. And before I had this reframe, I was kind of blaming my job. I was thinking, oh, it's because of my job. I don't have a good working, I do have a good working environment. However, at work I would find myself having to do more than what I thought I should be doing, and because it is in my nature, or so I thought, to do more, I was constantly over efforting. I was constantly making up for what others were not doing. I felt this heavy pressure, this heavy load, and I would just go and I'd rush through the day. On top of that, I was not nourishing myself properly. I'm still on a journey of learning to do that properly now, but I would go through the whole workday and not have lunch. I would only eat breakfast and I would skip lunch and not realize that I was undernourishing my body. So I was undernourishing my body and then just trying to get through the day, doing more than I thought I should be doing. So I just thought, okay, this job is burning me out. But then when I really thought about it, I realized that even if I were to quit my job tomorrow, I'm still the same Dana that would get burnt out doing something else. I fear that the only reason the burnout pattern is showing up so much right now is because I have the job and I'm doing all those other things. But if I were to quit my job and replace it with something else, or replace it with 3 other things that would fill my time and mental capacity and energetic capacity as much as my job does, I would still end up in that same pattern of burnout. So what this job has done for me is that it has allowed me to see that there is a pattern underlying this, and that hopefully that there's something I can do about it. So an important reframe and shift that I've had is that if I were to quit this job tomorrow, I would still burn out. It might not be in a year, it might take some more time, but I'll still burn out unless I do something about the nervous system pattern that is underlying it. So that's something very important I want you to take away from this. You're not just burning out because of your environment. Yes, your environment can make it worse. A toxic working environment can make it worse. Not having enough money and having to work 3 different jobs can make it worse. Poor family life can make it worse. Anything that would decrease your capacity or require you to exert more because of an external environment can make it worse. However, that internal push to keep on going forward and do more, either to appear perfect or to appear reliable or to feel some sense of self-worth, you doing that because you're doing all the things you do because you want to feel some sense of self-worth, that is what's at the root deep core of this nervous system pattern that leads to burnout. And that's an important reframe, because then it puts the ball in your court, right? This is not like blaming or shaming or anything, but I think looking at it this way is quite empowering, because if I know that if I quit my job tomorrow, I'll still burn out eventually, it then leads me to think about how I can change my lifestyle, change the way I live right now, engineer a life that supports me and nourishes me, and then prevents burnout. So it's important to have that mental reframe. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is that this is not a personality trait. I've always thought this is how I am. I've always been the overachiever. I've always done many things in high school. I would not sleep very much. I would have a 2-hour commute to go to school. I would do really well in school. I would do extra academic things, and I also did extracurricular activities and did them really well. And at that point, it was my personality. I didn't know how to live life except to be good at the things that I did. And honestly, some of it is natural talent and just natural inborn talent, and some of it was this nervous system response, the over efforting and over exerting as a nervous system response. I thought it was a personality trait. I thought I was just born like this is just me, this is how I am. And if you think like that, well, I can see how that wouldn't be very empowering, because if this is how you are, then that means that you're meant to burn out, which I do not accept that as a reality. If it's a nervous system pattern, then that can be rewired, that can be repatterned with some work. That won't be immediate, because if I've had this nervous system pattern for years, I am 26 years old. High school was what, 10 years? At 10 years old? So I can't do math. What's that? 16 years at least of this pattern. I don't really know what was happening before high school. Like, I don't have memory of that. I cannot say. But definitely in high school, it was there. So if I've had 16 years of this pattern at least, then I know that it will take I will have to intentionally, over time, give myself a different input to tell my body a different story if I want to see a different reality externally. That doesn't mean it will take 16 years. It just means that I accept that it will take time and intentional work. And one of the things with high achieving women, we tend to want to optimize things. I've always been somebody who wants to optimize my health, optimize my sleep. I wear an Oura ring. Like, that should tell you enough, right? And I can kind of tend to fall into the trap of biohacking, which what I'm going to talk about, which is nervous system work, is not biohacking, and you can't approach it from the perspective of wanting to biohack your body, because that won't work. I've tried the biohacky stuff, okay? You've heard me talk about that. I've tried supplements. I've tried this to track my sleep. I've tried things, okay? I've tried things. But understanding that what's causing the external reality is what's inside then leads me to come back home to my body, and how do I give a different input to my body and my nervous system so that my external will be different, not relying on an external supplement or protocol to fix what's happening. Another thing I want to bring to light is that well-meaning people might say to you, if you express that you're burnt out, or if they notice that you're burnt out or tired or doing too much, they might tell you to just rest. Like, oh, take a rest day. Right now I'm on 2 weeks vacation, and well, I'm trying to rest, but just to show you, like, if you are a high achieving woman with this nervous system pattern underneath of functional freeze or something else similar, it can feel difficult to rest. Like, resting can feel dreadful. It can feel stressful. And that's because the answer to this is not just taking every single thing off of your to-do list and doing nothing. Like, that nothingness, that collapse will feel like a threat to your nervous system. The way to deal with it is, yes, do nothing, but in small amounts at a time. So my approach to this hasn't been to not do anything or say no to business collaborations. It's just been to do a little bit less, like increasing the threshold for me to say yes to something and decreasing the threshold for me to say no, right? And this can look like anything for you, and it can sometimes feel difficult to do because, again, it feels like it's in your personality or in your bones to just do too much. But if you get to a point where you feel like you're burnt out because you don't have as much energy, if you start to use your body's energy cues to let you know, oh, can I handle this? Cannot handle this? And use that as a metric to then say yes to things or no to things, it will help so much. So you don't need to just cancel all your plans and disappear for 3 months or 3 years, and you don't need to work yourself into the ground so that you'll get sick and collapse and then not have to do anything, which can feel like a cop-out. I can't believe I just said that. But it doesn't have to be like that. A healthier way to approach it is to slowly say no to things, whatever that looks like for you. If you're a high achieving woman, you've put in a lot of work. Like, there's things that you do really well. At this point, if you were to do something like half-assed, I'm not saying to do anything half-assed, but if you were to do something with a little bit less effort, it might still be impeccably done. Like, done so well, like more than others. So you have that in you from years of doing things very well. So give yourself some permission to do a little bit less. And this brings me into what I'm going to talk about with the nervous system, specifically the female nervous system, which needs oxytocin. And our nervous system runs all of our other systems. And if our nervous system is in trouble, well, the main thing our nervous system wants us to do is survive, right? So if it thinks we just need to survive, it will be focusing on that. All our other secondary functions, which are not secondary to us, but they're secondary to life. The first thing is you must survive. Everything else that involves thriving, like healthy digestion, healthy skin, healthy hair, healthy libido, healthy reproduction, all of those things which are necessary for life to continue, but not for life to survive right now in this moment, those things become secondary. So oxytocin, giving enough oxytocin to our female nervous system, starts to let the nervous system know that we're no longer in survival. We can use some of this life force energy, some of this nervous system energy to run the other systems of our body. And oxytocin is something that we need daily as women, but there are some times in our cycle where we might need more oxytocin, such as when we're luteal or menstrual, as I mentioned earlier, or HRV drops when we're luteal and menstrual and we become more sympathetic dominant. When we notice that we're more sympathetic dominant, introducing more oxytocin in little bits at a time can help to regulate that. If you're someone with this over-efforting, over-exerting pattern, you might find yourself thinking, okay, oxytocin is the solution to my problems. Let me just try and give it to myself. So much of it to myself. That's also not really how this works. This works by a slow process of titration where you give yourself just the right amount of oxytocin that you need in the smallest dose possible to achieve an effective outcome. So you're not just gonna try to spend like half of your day oxytocin bathing because you think it will help your nervous system. That might actually backfire. It's just small amounts of somatic practice that you can tolerate. Whenever you can tolerate them. Yes, daily if you can. I'm still working up to doing it daily and consistently, but I've definitely noticed with doing somatic practice, my nervous system is slowly responding to that. In the same way that you want to titrate doing nothing, because you can't just go from doing everything to quitting everything and doing nothing. That will feel absolutely terrible. So in the same way that you have to titrate the nothingness, as in doing less each time you show up, still doing what you need to do but doing less, or it might sometimes look like taking some time out of your day to do nothing. Like if it's like for 30 seconds, that might feel too much for some people. But when I say do nothing, I mean like don't meditate, don't even focus on your breathing, just do nothing. You can do small amounts of that, and that's a small input to your nervous system. I think doing a somatic practice before doing the nothing might signal to your body that it's safe to do nothing. And then the other thing we want to titrate is actually oxytocin, because we respond to oxytocin in the right dose, and figuring out what your right dose of oxytocin is each person's own personal journey when they're working with their nervous system, when they're working with their female nervous system. If you are a high achieving woman experiencing burnout and you think that you might benefit from doing somatic practice, I will plug the practitioner directory down below. It's from Waking Womb, my teacher Veronica. I completed her 12-week training program for somatics for the female nervous system. I am not currently offering one-on-one sessions, but there is a directory of practitioners who are doing that. So if you would like to be supported by someone who understands how to get you into your female nervous system using small bits of oxytocin at a time, then you can check out that directory to find somebody who resonates with you. And then as for me, I'll be opening up coaching, one-on-one integrative health coaching sessions in the next coming months to support women who are experiencing burnout, cycle symptoms, using my favorite integrative modalities such as sleep, nutrition, and somatics. If you're interested in hearing about that, and you want to be the first to know when that's ready, then sign up for the waitlist down below, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.